Hi, I kind of got excited this morning because this big revelation was given to me about some stuff that's been happening in preparation for some things that God wants written in this book that He's having me write on healing from the inside out. So I was getting excited, but then I began to think, you know what? This information that He's sharing with me over the last few weeks, few weeks, is really just too important not to share with everybody as soon as I can share it, because we all find ourselves in pain at times in our life, or we know people that are going through pain. And what was really revealed to me today through my reading of Matthew 16 was a whole new awareness of how to deal with pain, and how especially to deal when other people are in pain. The verse I'm talking about is when Jesus is telling his disciples about the coming events leading up to his crucifixion. And up until this point, they don't know anything that's going to happen to him. So he starts laying out and kind of preparing them for what's to come. And Peter, one of his most favorite disciples, gets really upset by this new information. And he basically, the Bible says, he rebukes Jesus and says, "Never, Lord, this shall not happen to you." And in that moment, Jesus chimes back at him and says, "Get behind me, Satan." And very strongly says that. And, in our human perspective, we're kind of looking at, why would Jesus say that to one of his most beloved disciples? Then Jesus goes on to explain. He says, "You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Now, when we think about that, at least when I thought about that, and have heard that in the previous, heard those verses previously mentioned, I always just kind of took it to that evil perspective where, if something's coming against you that's evil, you say, "Get behind me, Satan," and, those kinds of things. But I never took it in the context that was shared with me today until it kind of was revealed to me today what exactly Jesus meant when he said that to Peter. It didn't mean that he thought Satan had infiltrated Peter's body and had possessed him to say those things. What it did mean was that Peter, in his care and concern and love for Jesus, wanted to protect him from what he was talking about. But it was in that care and concern and love for Jesus, it wasn't an authentic care and concern, but rather an egotistical care and concern for Jesus. And the reason I say that is because our egos, one of the main things it wants to avoid is pain and suffering. So it will go to great lengths to avoid pain and suffering. And you might think, well, what's the big deal in that? Well, the big deal in that is, if we look back at Jesus's pain and suffering led the way to our salvation. It was because his pain and suffering that we all now have the free will choice to be able to have intimate communion with God. So if the ego wanted to prevent Jesus from having that pain and suffering, then it would have messed up the divine plan that God had for Jesus's life. And so therefore Jesus is talking to Peter's ego, saying, "Get behind me, Satan, because you cannot enable me to stay where I am. Because if you try to protect me by rallying troops or, trying to thwart the crucifixion, then God's plan isn't going to be fulfilled." If you even try to talk me out of having to go through my destiny, you'll get in my head and maybe I'll, get stuck in the comfort zone of not wanting to be crucified, and therefore you'll thwart what my divine plan is for my life. So that's really why Jesus got so upset with him, because he was talking to Peter's ego, or the darkness of Peter's soul that we all have. We all have that ego in us, and that ego wants to protect us from pain and suffering, as well as when we see other people in pain and suffering. The first thing we want to go do is we want to cushion the blow of their pain and suffering, however that looks like. I know, especially as women and as a mom, I have done that so many times where I want to make it not so sad for my kids. So I might say words that actually are enabling them to stay in the conditioned state they're in, or I might make an excuse for them, or I know I covered up little indiscretions from my husband so there wouldn't be this big blowout fight and they'd get in more trouble than maybe the little bit of trouble that they got in because of me. Whenever you try to interfere with someone's pain and suffering, you're really interfering with their growth and the healing of their soul. And when we do that, we in essence kind of put ourselves on that level of God, saying we know better than God knows, and we got to come in here and control everything and make it better, because in essence our way is better than having them in pain and suffering. But what we must understand is that through the pain and suffering is where the real moxie of life and the real healing and the real connection of life can actually start to transpire. So with this little revelation on enabling today, it was really brought to my attention to the importance of letting people fall, because it's in the fall again that God is trying to get to them. And the fall can look a million different ways, and some falls are a lot bigger than other falls. But the important thing for you, if you're in the presence of someone who is about to fall, you have to consider that this is a breakthrough moment for them, and they're really getting to really break through a part of their darkness within and break free of that ego that's been holding them back from whatever's going on in their life. So the best thing we can do for them is to be there as a fair witness and encourage them to look into their pain and suffering, and encourage them to reach out to God in prayer and for answers, instead of us trying to give the answers to them or make them feel better. We just are there as a means of support, fair witness, and encouragement. Maybe even you've gone through something similar, so you can just encourage them that they're going to make it through. Number one thing with what's the word I'm looking for? The number one thing with trying to enable somebody. Secondly, with enabling, is that if you're in the midst of pain and suffering and people come to your aid trying to help you with your pain and suffering, and it might even look like something as simple as giving you an excuse to blame somebody else, or taking your side in an argument, or picking up the pieces for you by bailing you out of some serious situation. All of those things you must rebuke just as Jesus did, because that is your ego trying to latch onto those things and make excuses and play the victim so that it doesn't have to be found out and the light doesn't have to shine on that aspect that God's trying to come forth for breakthrough and healing. So it can release you of however that's being, you're being captivated by that part of your life. So that's kind of the gist of what I received today when I was reading that Bible verse. And I just want to end with what Jesus went on to tell the rest of his disciples as he was explaining himself, kind of. He says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. That means take up your pain, take up your suffering, and look to him for your answers. For whoever wants to save their life must lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain their whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? So Jesus is reminding us, we're not giving up our life to a physical death, but we're giving up our ego, the false identity that this ego has created of who we are and who we think we should be. That's what's being put up for death, and we're giving that up for death. And that's why the ego fights so hard to keep us small, because it doesn't want us to expand into that higher consciousness and that more intimate connection with God. Because let's face it, the ego is a little darkness within us. It's a little, whatever you want to say. You can call it the devil, whatever. But it's that side of ourself that doesn't want the light shown on it. And when we decide to take the personal responsibility to start shining light on the ego and healing those parts, we become brighter, we become lighter, and we actually find the life we were meant to live. And that is in close communion with God and in this state of mystery and mysticism and magic, rather than in this controlled and restricted state of misery and suffering. Hopefully that brings a little insight into maybe some stuff that you might be going through, or in order to help other people who are going through the pain and suffering. And all the moms of the world out there, you are not serving your kids. I made the mistake of trying to do the same thing, but you're not serving your children by not letting them fall and enabling them to continue in the same repetitious pattern of behavior. Their soul is calling them forward. You have to let them fall. You have to let them get through the breakthrough moment. You be the fair witness and the encourager to let them know you can do it. And then also heal yourself, because when you heal yourself, you open the doorway for all your family, your friends, everybody you know to start healing themselves also. So like I said, I thought that was a really good insight that was laid on me today. And start using the tools and shift that perspective, because it does make such a huge difference in how you view life, and opens the door to that deeper connection and just a better, joyful life. Have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.